Hi, so welcome back to round two. So after a good start against Dash Shadow, I played against the player wonderPreaux, and it's a very known Doomsday player, probably one of the best Doomsday players on MTGO. He has relatively good results with the deck and a couple of top 8s in the last weeks. A very strong player. So it was a good to know what to expect here, but then I regret a bit that I don't have access to the endurance in the main deck, but I
Can't
can
have it all.
have it all, and also we have a very good sideboard against him, so after sideboarding we are very favored against Doomsday, but here I would say we can live with it to just lose in game one.
Yeah.
So here um, I was on the draw, and I thought that I don't have that good options to start against Doomsday. Also, Shepherd is one of the best ways, and then try to set up quick kill with that. But on the other hand, I like to show a bit of strength if I play against the players. So here the opponent did mulligan to 6, and he's on the play. So I think it's also sometimes a good sign if you play against combo decks to just show a bit of strength if you keep the 7 card hand, especially after they mulliganed. So they probably can lean toward a bit slower hand by that, but here they just do their thing, I would say. They just set up for the personal tutor, and they search for the Edge of Autumn. That shows
Okay.
that they
So
already have access
at
to
this
the
point,
Doomsday.
at this point, you already know they are not on the Esper version or a tempo variant with the Tom Stalkers because we see the personal tutor. So
Yeah,
we know
very
they are
good.
on the fast Doomsday version.
Yeah, very good information. Not really expected the opponent to play one of the newer versions anyway, because he's consistently playing almost the same versions over the last weeks. But he played a bit of a different list this day, but usually he plays the list he's usually playing, and he opted to change that a bit to go to more traditional build because he didn't really played. Um, just look up the cards. I've just forgot the card.
I mentioned it because I saw, I think it's the username Fools65, that he went undefeated with the Esper variant that had Mentos and swords in the sideboard. So that's definitely something to look out for when you're playing a Doomsday. So many versions around.
Yeah, usually you're right, but that not really changes that much by our decisions, I would say. So you have to expect if they're playing Esper, they have access to Baleful Strix, and probably in the main deck they already also play Teferi. You can you need to expect that, and I would say that doesn't really change that much how we play against them. And here it's fortunate to top deck the Azul Shepherd
Yeah,
to just negate all his counter spells. So
yeah.
here,
I think like Shepard and Reclaimer are like the other new BFF on the team. So we have the old BFF, which is Symbiote and Visio,
yeah,
and Reclaimer and Shepard are the new BFF when one pumps the team and the other finds the cradle, right?
exactly. So they are synergizing very well together, and especially with searching for the cradle to use the pump ability. But Azul Shepherd creates virtual card advantage, so it's so strong, and I think at the moment or in the near future, I can't really imagine to go down to 3 again. But usually it is possible to just cut one of them, but at the moment I think it's just too strong, especially as there are so strong blue builds like Jeskai Control and Delver and also the Chalice decks. So
Yeah.
makes sense to just play the playset. And here we can soon see what the opponent is exactly plays. And it's a traditional version, I would say.
This is interesting to be able to review with you together. What are you looking for when you are watching uh, the Doomsday player? Are you
First,
counting? For
first
example,
of all,
I usually took
forces.
land count.
Yeah, there are a couple of things. So usually, if I'm not controlling the shepherd, for sure, anyway, I just count the amount of forces because then you know if you have shepherd, you know how much useless cards he has in his hand. So if he has one or two forces not shown in the exile pile, you know that he has two dead cards in the hand. So that matters even if he doesn't be able to counter anything. Then usually I just look at the amount of lotus petals to just see how much mana he has, and
Yeah.
if it could matter to just get Collector Oof on the battlefield.
Oh yes, of course.
Then I also watch at the amount of discard spells they have. Sometimes they do a setup turn or can do a setup turn where they just um, play around endurance, for example, but most likely this is in the sideboarding games. And here also relevant to know that the opponent also has one Thassa's Oracle in the exile zone. So he only plans to cast one of it. It could be good to have access to endurance, and I could get him. But and also for sure, since we are playing Boseiju, I should read the amount of lands he has in this, not in his exile. He could have lands in his hand, but he didn't play the land this turn, so it's unlikely that he has already a hand in his hand. But they usually should add at least one land into the pile, just to be sure to just be able to cast Thassa's Oracle, and then he's also, if we are um, Bosejuing them, we are already helping them because they remove one card out of the deck, I would say.
Yeah.
So it is helpful for the opponent if we Boseiju them and they put the land into the pile. And here we see the four underground seas and the swamp. So we know that they usually play a island. So we know that they either have an island, no, they don't have the island in hand because they didn't play the land, but they have an island in the pile. So Boseiju doesn't do anything here. And I think the other cards don't really matter except of the cyclers to see.
LED. I usually check for LED to see if they are going for the
LED,
same turn pile.
LED, yes, I would say you're right, but if you look up the opponent, then in his latest list, he didn't even play LED. So
Wow.
it can
Really?
be, no, so it can be, usually you're right, it can be relevant to look for the LEDs, but in his latest list, he didn't even play them. So
Very interesting.
yeah, and as I mentioned, I think the amount of cyclers, and then you also can look through the amount of cantrips, and then you have a very good feeling for which card he has access to in the pile and in his hand. So, but it changed a bit because he played a different list than in the last weeks. So here he
Yeah.
has, for
A
example, three
grief. Yeah,
pink.
I was watching at
Yes,
that. Yeah, I
not
think
really sure.
free discard is very smart. to protect combo. That actually makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah, to be very mana efficient, and he has a couple of black cards, dead black cards anyway, so he can use additional rituals, for example, because he plays 3 Cabal rituals and 4 Dark rituals. So,
Yeah.
but we can resume here. So here I just drew the Wirewood Symbiote, and then I thought, usually I think the player is known to do a setup turn, so sometimes he's passing and then trying to clear the way, I would say. So I decided to attack first and then play Green Sun Zenith for 0 and the Elvish Reclaimer. And Green Sun Zenith to ramp to get access to more mana next turn.
Makes
And
sense. More
this,
life top decks. Yeah.
yeah, and this increases the chance that I can probably find a natural order, for example. But here they have access to Ideas Unbound, which they didn't had in the last lists. So they added it back to the deck. And yeah, so here they just drew Petals and they had one card left in their deck.
Yeah. The island was you already mentioned.
Yeah, and if I had Endurance, I would have got him, but I don't think that they play around the one of Endurance anyway.
No.
But it was very unlikely to get access to the Endurance. And as you see, I don't have a Progenitus in my hand here, so
Okay.
I wouldn't have had the Endurance anyway. So I think it's very clear that he has
What
a
you mentioned, I think here we accept we have a pretty bad first game, and then we
exactly, and
try
they
to come back
also
in games 2 and 3.
yeah, and they were also on the play. So on day 1 on turn 3, I think uh, if we untapped here on the next turn, there would have been a way to win in the next turn, maybe. But with this hand and with this redrawn cards, not very likely. But accepting the loss in the first game makes sense. And then in the second game, it went much more different. So here in the second game, I have the double endurance protection. Not really aggressive because only Wirewood Symbiote, but with the double endurance protection, I feel very safe to keep that. And what I also like, or also wrote to Newton lately, was especially if you don't have a good one drop to start with, then you can just play against the combo decks. You can wait and then you just play the fetch land and fetch for Dryad Arbor. And then you have a good chance to top deck or a decent chance to top deck the Once Upon a Time to be able to cast it for free.
Yeah,
Because
the
the
turn two once
Wirewood,
upon a time.
yeah, the turn 2 for free, but the Wirewood Symbiote wouldn't have done anything here if I played it on turn 1, so I decided to just play the land and wait a bit. And then
Wow,
they
they
play,
had it again turn 1.
yeah, they just set up the Doomsday here, but I have double endurance as protection, which is very good. And here, so
Yeah,
I have the Arbor, and then I can just cast the Visionary. So I have the 2 pitch cards for the endurances, and then I just redrew the Heritage Druid. And I play the Dark Ritual and the Doomsday.
cast Doomsday. Yeah, we are just lucky. The last card also is blue mana and no black. So let's see if they pass a turn.
Yeah, yeah. They decided to pass a turn again, and here
So
again,
it is interesting for me that they don't have they don't play the LED because the LED usually allows the Doomsday player to win in the same turn. So it's interesting.
yeah,
The very least.
and here we see only one street race, so he probably has a street race. And here, one card I noticed from his deck was Collective Brutality,
Wow,
which
yeah,
is
that's new.
interesting. especially if they are able to kill a Allosaurus Shepherd and discard a natural order, for example, from my hand, could matter. And also not the thing that he's bringing in for, or at least I see 3 Force of Negations. And
Yeah, well, that is interesting to bring
all
them in
all
the deck.
all Force of Wills. So they probably had the Force of Negation in the starting hand to prevent me from casting a discard spell, and that way they protected their Doomsday, or at least
The
they
personal tutor, yeah.
personal tutor and the Dark Ritual. So here probably would have made sense to discard the Dark Ritual, but they were able to protect it. And yeah, okay, so here I have 2 endurances, which is very good. So I see that they only have, they don't have any Force of Wills in their uh, deck or pile anymore. So I think having double endurance up is very safe. So here I tried to Boseiju them, but that didn't really matter. So I didn't need to do that. But that I thought about to do it because it decreases the amount of chances they have if they play, for example, brainstorm into something or discard spell into something. So reducing their mana makes sense, but usually it doesn't really impact the way they are or preventing them to combo. But here, I think it totally makes sense to reduce the chances that
How
they
many
attack
how
me.
many lands is does the stock Doomsday play? I think 14, around 14 is possible.
Usually it's like 14, and the Cavern of Souls usually is the 15th land.
Yeah.
So Cavern of Souls gets sided out for sure, but here they only have 1 protection. They just use the Thoughtseize, and they're not able to beat the other endurance. So, and I'm already also able to play around days if he has access to 1 days there. And here I can do the value thing, and then yeah, they just scooped here because they realized that they can't beat second endurance. I can just let I can just wait, and then if the Tassas Oracles on the stack, I can just send
Play
the
the
cards
runs.
back, and then they don't have a win condition anymore because they didn't decide to to have access to the second
Second
Thassa's
one. Yeah.
Oracle. So it was probably a mistake of the opponent to set up the wrong pile, but they probably expected um, that they only have 1 endurance. But yeah, probably my hand lined up very good against his hand because
Yeah,
they
yeah.
had the Force of Negation and I didn't really cast a single non-creature spell this turn. So we can go to game 3 now. Boom.
Mm.
Yeah, I think that's a boom hand. So here only missing 1 black mana, but it's very safe, I would say. So we can prevent a really fast Doomsday. We have the protection with the endurance, but only missing a bit of mana here. But I think there's a good chance that we can top deck it in time. So here the same as before, just reducing the use of the Force of Wills or the counter spells in general. And here they cast Brainstorm and the Thoughtseize and decided to discard my endurance. And here the Mindbreak Trap probably was also very good to save future turns.
Yeah.
Here I just missed the mana, but they probably didn't have a good way to do that or no protection by that, and then they baited. Uh,
Oh,
yeah,
do
they
they
bait.
do they play LED in the sideboard?
No, they played LED indeed in the main deck, but we didn't really see it earlier.
Interesting.
But here it's also interesting play because they played Ponder into Personal Tutor and they played the LED into the Mindbreak Trap. They tried to bait me countering it, but
Maybe just checking, yeah, right? Because they probably Google your lists also, so they were maybe testing the waters to see if you have it.
yeah, but he knew because he had the discard spell earlier, so he knew that I already have the trap. But here I think it was very clear that it's a bait. So I didn't really see that LED matters any somehow. So you
No, I think
can
LED
maybe set
only.
up something,
Uh,
but um, it was obvious for me that it's a bait and just ignore the card.
Basically, LED enables the same turn wins, right? That's it.
Yeah. And that is what I can prevent with the trap. I can prevent
Yeah,
that he can win in the same turn, and he also needs to do Doomsday first. For sure, they can set up it somehow with a force of will, but it's not that likely and it's hard to get there. But here we have the perfect top deck with the Cradle. And here I tanked a bit. And yeah, I thought about, okay, I'm not able to kill with the Natural Order. I don't want to give too much information because they knew that I have those three cards in my hand. And if I play the Elvish Visionary and find a Birchlow Ranger, I can play the Reclaimer and cast the Thoughtseize in my hand. And I wanted to play around days a bit, so here I just decided to play the Cradle, cast the Visionary to draw a card.
yeah. You
The
have a
card draw,
resolved Shepherd, so
yeah, the card draw also is good to maybe find Endurance
endurance.
and finding another Cradle. So here he decided to keep up the mana to play around days. Yeah, and then they drew and scooped. So here
Wow.
they were not able to beat the Mindbreak Trap. This is what I read by their scoop at the moment. And they had the setup, they had access to the Doomsday, but probably that would involve a cover ritual or a dark ritual, and then they weren't able to beat the Mindbreak
Yeah,
Trap.
they knew about the natural order as well, so
Yeah, exactly. So they couldn't beat the Mindbreak Trap this turn, and with the Natural Order I had lethal next turn anyway, so they could sometimes they play Massacre on the sideboard. Maybe they could sweep the board, and this was also a reason why I didn't play the Force Shepherd to have the second Reclaimer. The second Reclaimer is my Natural Order target anyway. I can sacrifice it to get the hoof, and I didn't want to play too much into the Massacre. Maybe he has Massacre and then I lose the whole board, and by this I can maybe have a chance to reassemble the board there, but
if they spend
probably
the
not.
mana for the massacre, I think you are already buying a lot of turns for yourself.
Yeah, and most
So
likely I could have prevent Massacre anyway because of the Mindbreak Trap. Maybe they needed to cast Cantrip into Ritual, or but it wasn't mattering here, so I think this card saved the game. Otherwise, he would have been able to go off and kill in the same turns, especially with a Lionside Diamond. Do we have some notes regarding this match?
mm, no, nothing else really. I think it's a very hard match for our deck currently. I agree that we improve a lot post board, but I still think is I think the Doomsday players, at least the good ones, they are already used with our tricks, right? As we can see here by the Mindbreak Trap bait,
Yeah.
and they are can also play around Boseiju sometimes by making a pile with one extra land sometimes or something like this, or maybe doing a slow Tasa pile to have four devotion points, so the endurance doesn't matter. So definitely, I think it's very close right now, and especially if both pilots are experienced in the matchup.
Yep, I totally agree. But I'm not really understanding why the opponent didn't went for the double Thassa's Oracle in the pile. Uh, would have been much more safe for the opponent, and um, maybe Boseiju is one factor because the amount of slots in the piles are limited, especially if they want to play around with Boseiju. Yeah, but probably there would be a way to um, save saves the opponent by the endurance. But it was very good to win in this matchup because he's a very good player, and especially against the good Doomsday players, it's not that easy.
No, I agree. I agree. It's very close. It's very very close.
Yeah, but here my draw were very good again, so I had top decked also Shepherd, and yeah, it was a bit unfortunate to not find a Black Source, but with the protection, had double protection with a Mind Break Trap and the Endurance, so basically it's a snap keep.
Yeah. So basically, if they want to go on a counter war on the stack through the endurance, you would probably be able to cast the mind break trap.
Yeah, and with the Shepherd in play, it doesn't work for him anyway, so
Hmm.
makes sense. Okay, so let's proceed to match 3, I would say.
Yes, please. Let's go.